It's ready to go.
Yeah, to mask or unmask, that is the question. It is a hot topic.
Yeah, especially, yes, now with Delta and
Is that you? Or is that me? I think that was you, Jim. You're on mute. There you are. You're back.
yes.
Yeah, C4 and Brian are good guys.
They are.
They get it, and we were quite successful running all last year.
Yeah, I think generally we don't celebrate success enough, and these days even ordinary success should be celebrated.
Yep, doing my best.
I know.
But I have a target on my front and a target on my back.
Oh, that's not necessarily good. You
No,
need to go out.
The maskers are shooting me in the front, and the unmaskers are shooting me in the back.
That's not good.
It's fun.
Hello, Jim.
Yes.
No, I'm having all kinds of problems. Things were working yesterday.
Well, Mary Pat, we can hear. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, we can hear you, even though it shows that you're muted. But we can. I think we are now at quorum, and we're 2 minutes after. If you want to call the meeting to order, we can just get started.
Can you hear me? Jim, can you hear me?
You were breaking up, but we heard part of it, Mary.
Yeah, I'm having to use my phone. And I'll try to keep going, or if somebody else wants to take over. You can tell me if you're not hearing me. And
No, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, sorry for the problems today. Anyway, welcome. And we have a few new members with us today that we'd like to welcome. We're trying to see if everybody speaks my name and
Madam Chair, if you're speaking, your show as on mute, and we're not hearing you now. It might be easier for you to sign off and then call in. And if you want, I can go ahead and get us started.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me now? Because I did sign in. I did call in on my phone. Okay, so I'll just do it with the phone. And Jim, if you can be my eyes, will be great. So, and I should say Secretary Fielder, I apologize for that. So anyway, we have 3 new members with us today. And let me begin with Dr. Craig Williams, who's with Johns Hopkins Healthcare. And Craig, I can't see you, but if you'd like to say just a few words and a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to be with you and a pleasure to join the commission. I'm looking forward to the work. I work for Johns Hopkins Healthcare and economic development, work for the university as well. Worked in and out of state government, federal government, and the private sector. And really appreciate the opportunity to join you all.
Great. Thank you very much. We're delighted to have you join the commission. And Dr. Ray Serrano, Commissioner Serrano, is an analyst with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And Commissioner Serrano, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Sorry, I had a lot of difficulty logging on, but yeah, I guess I'm the newbie in the group here. Very much excited to be on board. Hopefully, I won't have as many trouble trying to log on in the future. But yeah, I some background on me. I kind of first generation college guy. Grew up in Idaho. Went to school all over the country. Started in California. Went to Connecticut for my master's, and then did my doctorate in Georgia. Kind of all the way through, kind of working with first generation college students, trying to recruit underrepresented minority students into college. And so it's kind of in my blood, I guess, to try to work to try to get more folks who are first generation college and underrepresented minorities into higher education. So that's been kind of a personal directive of mine. So I'm super excited to be here. Again, I'm the newbie, so I have a lot to learn, and I'll probably be doing more listening than talking. So yeah.
Well, great. It's good to have you here, and you and I are both having some problems today logging on, so you're not alone. And let me turn to our student commissioner, and I came on just as you were pronouncing your name, and correct me, is it Halimat Adekoya?
It's totally okay, Madam Chair. It's Halima Adekoya. Good afternoon.
Halima Adekoya. Thank you. Would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
Of course, no problem. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for having me today. I'm very excited to be joining the commission and participating in amazing work. I am a third-year accelerated BA MAT student at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I have a political science major, and I'm also pursuing an elementary education certificate. I'm really passionate about education. I was a former student board member for Baltimore County, 2018 to 2019, so I do have prior experience being on a board. Very passionate about ensuring that students always have equitable experiences and the ability to attain the education that they desire. So I'm excited to be here and to continue to do amazing work in education. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much, and we're delighted to have you join us. So thank you again. Before I turn things over to the Secretary for a few comments, I just wanted to make commissioners aware that just recently, a day or two ago, Commissioner Donna Mitchell let us know that she would have to submit her resignation for personal reasons. And we are very, very sorry to see her go. She has served on the commission for 6 years, served as vice chair, and when needed, stepped in as acting chair, and was just a great contributor to our work. If any of you should run into her, have a chance to talk to her, please make certain you thank her for her service. And with that resignation, I wish I could see all your faces at this point, we need to appoint a new vice chair. And so I would ask if anybody's interested in serving in that position, that you could send an email to me or to Secretary Fielder, and if you could do that by the end of this week, that would be helpful. And then Secretary Fielder and I will consult and determine who to appoint as the next vice chair of the commission.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Chair. This is Soma. I just wanted to note that the bylaws of the commission actually require that the vice chair be elected by voice vote by the members.
Okay, thanks, Selma. So we will bring a recommendation to the commissioners then. So with that, Secretary Fielder, let me turn things over to you for your remarks.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon and a most exciting welcome to the 3 new members. I look forward to working with you, as does all the MHEC staff. And as each of you had the chance to take a look at our website, the information, the 4-year state plan is in current revision, but it still will continue to carry forward on student success, access, and innovation. Those are the 3 primary pillars that we're working on, so I think that fits with each of you. And Halima, we really look forward. I think you're in teaching, is that correct? You're pursuing, yes. Okay, so we'll have some greater insight in what we need to do on the teacher certification as the Kerwin moves forward. And also with a new superintendent, we look forward to that kind of input. I think with Donna Mitchell we talked yesterday, and she submitted the letter in writing. I was hoping that I could talk her out of it, but as you know, when she makes up her mind, it's moving, and she did. We're going to miss her. The big thing she requested was to be included in the Christmas party, which I've already committed to if we get to it this year. So those three things. Another good news, within the last year, we've been working with a startup college, which is really, really rare during a pandemic for a college to get started. And we finished the review of the academic side, finished the review of the application, first application, and second application, and just a week ago approved the collegium to move forward in Hagerstown. And this will be a conservative Catholic school to start with a small enrollment, but planning on future growth, be recruiting from Catholic schools and K-12 systems. So we look forward to working with them. So that's a bit of good news, even with innovation, you know, in an area when we're thinking like we're in a pandemic and institutions are concerned about enrollment. So it's kind of exciting that we're seeing that birth of something. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Secretary Fielder. The first order of business is to approve the minutes, and you can see that we have 4 sets of minutes to approve. 2 were in open session, 2 in closed session. And I would ask if we could just have a motion to at least get these on the floor, and then I'll see if there are any amendments, corrections, additions. So would someone move to approve all the minutes?
Madam Chair, I so move.
And a second, please. Just to get this on the floor for now. So are there any corrections from anyone? Any additions, amendments? All right, if not, all in favor, please say aye or indicate aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. We now will take our committee updates, and Commissioner Boyd, if I could begin with you from the Education Policy Committee.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. The Education and Policy Committee had our meeting this past Monday, and it was our responsibility to review the guidelines, stipulations for the functioning of that very important committee. So we were able to go through all of the expectations for the role and function of the committee. And also at that meeting, through the work of Emily, we were able to understand many, many issues that are on the table coming up for our review and work in the fall period that is just ahead. So we will have a little time to sort of strengthen the committee with some members' roles that we need to include as soon as possible. But it does sound like we're now all on the same page and ready to take on what's ahead for us. So it was a very productive meeting.
Any questions for Commissioner Boyd? Commissioner Boyd, can I ask you, I think that we need to identify some new members for the committee, am I right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so we'll be working on that.
Yes, that needs to happen as soon as we can get that underway.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Jackson, do you have a report from your committee on outreach grants and financial assistance?
No, unfortunately, I don't have anything to report. However, I'm excited that we have a new student commissioner, and we have typically had that student join our committee. We are going to need some help. So looking forward, welcome to all of our commissioners. But Halima, thank you so much, and looking forward to getting a chance to talk with you in more detail. I hope that our next meeting we'll have something to report. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And since Commissioner Mitchell is not with us today, and I can't see, is Jeff Newman with us, Secretary Fielder?
I am.
Pardon? Yes.
Oh, thanks. Jeff, do you have anything to report on Finance and Operations Committee?
Sure. We have currently have about 13 vacancies in the agency. We've had people leave, and we are in various points in recruiting and filling those positions. MHEC has been on top of trying to make sure that nothing is being held up by our agency. But it is a bit of a process. Things have to go to the Department of Budget Management, Office of Personnel Services and Benefits, and then come back to us. And then we have to set up the interview panels. And I think we have 3 positions, actually 4, which we're now going to interview for. We've filled 1 contractual position, and then we have others in line to continue in the process. So we hope to get these concluded in the next month or 2, all the vacancies filled. As far as the fiscal side of the house is concerned, we just closed fiscal 2021. We've opened fiscal 2022 as of July 1st. And we are preliminary starting to work on what we're going to submit to the Department of Budget Management and the Governor's Office for our fiscal 2023 budget, which usually occurs about this time of year when we get the initial information in, and then we have our meeting with the Department of Budget Management in the fall, and we will proceed from there. And if any of you are familiar, we have an annual meeting where we have the segments come in to the commission to present their thoughts on the upcoming fiscal year and what their plans are for their budget requests and budgets for fiscal 2023. And that will be at the next commission meeting, where we will have the segments talk directly with you, the commissioners, about what they're looking for their budgets. So that's what I have to say on behalf of the Finance and Operations Committee.
Good, thank you, Mr. Newman. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you. And Commissioner McDaniels, is there a report from Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee?
No, there is not. I have not participated in a meeting since our last discussion, so I don't have a report for today.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Okay, so as you can see from the agenda, we have a number of items under academic affairs. The first 3 are informational, but certainly we'll take any questions that you might have about those. And then with the last 2, we need to take a vote on those 2 items. So Dr. Dow, let me turn things over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. For those of you who are new, I am Emily Dow. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Academic Affairs at the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Welcome to our new commissioners, and it's good to see our returning commissioners, so thank you. I'm going to turn the time over to our Director for Academic Affairs, Trish Gordon-McCown, and let her present the 3 quarterly reports. So Trish, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Dow. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Having a little bit of audio trouble. All right, as Dr. Dow stated, we're going to review the quarterly reports. These reports are for quarter 1, and this is for the time period of January 1st of 2021 to March 31st of 21. The reports begin on page 11 of the commission book. So the first quarterly report that we're going to go over is the Institutions of Higher Education Programs. This report does cover colleges and universities, and we will go over the actions during this first quarter. There were a total of 100 academic program proposals under this quarter. The report does break down the actions to cover programs that were objected to, new programs and certificate programs. It does also cover substantial modifications and non-substantial modifications, withdrawals, institution partnerships, and our programs that were not approved or not recommended. One thing that you will see in this quarterly report is that we did add additional information. It not only covers our in-state and out-of-state institution actions, but we will also go over our online registrations, and we've added a summary of the academic common market and unique majors, which is all covered under the collegiate unit of academic affairs. There were a total of 92 actions taken in Q1 for our in-state programs. The out-of-state programs, there were a total of 3 actions. You may see on the second page of the Institution of Higher Education programs that there were 28 discontinued programs, and there is a total of 3 actions. The reason why that reads that way is because the 28 discontinued programs was part of an institution closure from Anna G. Mendez, which operated 3 campuses in Maryland. So those 28 programs were under that institution. For the out-of-state applications, again, this quarter, as we've reported in the past, it's important to note that most of our programs are under renewal for every August 31st. Most of our institutions are under a 5-year extended approval. So the actions appear minimal for this particular quarter, but that is because we have only reviewed new programs proposed in between the renewal periods. Right, so I'm going to go on to, it's kind of hard to have you follow along with the page numbers, but this section 1 for program objections, there were 6 objections for our institutions of higher education for this quarter. Those objections are listed on page 4 of this report. One of the objections was for a proposing institution was Notre Dame of Maryland. That program the final action was not recommended, and there were 5 additional proposing institutions that received objections, and those programs were recommended. It's important to note within this quarterly report that there were 15 new degree programs. There were 8 new certificate programs. And I'm going to skip over to the substantial modifications and non-substantial modifications. There were 0 substantial modifications for the quarter, and there were a total of 58 non-substantial modifications. For those of you that may not be as familiar with the quarterly report, the substantial modifications were actions that were taken from an institution, proposed by an institution of higher education that deemed more than 33% of the program had changed in substance. And non-substantial modifications are minimal changes such as suspending programs, modality changes, title changes, and things like that. I'm going to go directly to the section for withdrawal of proposals. There are 3 withdrawal proposals or programs for this quarter, and they were all 3 from Frostburg State. There was an institution partnership, 4 total actions taken there. It's important to note that 3 of the programs were submitted from Towson University. Those programs are offered at a regional higher education center in Southern Maryland. I will stop in just a moment for questions. And then for, again, the out-of-state institutions, the 28 programs that were discontinued under Anna G. Mendez are accounted for within this quarterly report. The online registration section, which was added for this quarterly report, there were a total of 5 actions taken during the quarter. If you look at that section within the report, which is on the final 2 pages, those actions, the 5 actions were taken from the various institutions, out-of-state institutions, and there were a total of 27 new programs, 42 renewed programs, and 18 renewal programs with Maryland residents. I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions or comments regarding the quarterly report for institutions of higher education.
Trish, could you take a minute and briefly explain the difference for that last program in terms of the online registration institution as compared to what's required for the SARA institutions?
Sure. Our online registration is our programs that are registered with the state of Maryland. These are for programs that are fully online, that are offering programs to Maryland residents. The NC SARA institutions are institutions that operate within states that have been approved by the Southern Regional Education Board to offer online programs. And there are consumer protections as well as the ability to file complaints. There's a process to protect students that participate in those programs. The only state that does not participate in NC SARA at this time is the state of California.
And for the new commission members, SARA is not a person; it's the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement, which was approved by the Maryland legislature in 2015, which allows out-of-state institutions to be registered within their state, and if they pay the participatory money, they can offer online degrees directly into Maryland residents without anything other than a reporting to us that they are, which really changes the competition for all our in-state institutions.
Ms. Gordon, could you remind us whether the determination of whether modifications are substantial or non-substantial, is that determined by the institution or the Higher Education Commission, whether it's substantial or not?
The proposing institution will indicate whether it's a substantial or non-substantial. The commission does review that proposal to confirm that that is indeed the case. So that process, and there are, the analyst will make that determination after reviewing. As I said, they'll confirm that it is a substantial or non-substantial modification.
And that, Commissioner McDaniels, the trigger is 33%. If 33% of the course material is being changed or greater, that's considered substantial. Under 33%, it's not and does not require the review, which potentially triggers the distribution and objections from other institutions.
Secretary Fielder, can you say just a bit more about how SARA is impacting in-state schools?
Okay, well, before SARA, any institution from out of state was required to go through a review. I don't know whether it was the term approval process to offer courses in Maryland. Once SARA was approved and the institutions in Maryland that decided they wanted to offer courses online in other states, we have a couple dozen, I believe, between the public and private sector that are registered through Maryland to offer those programs in other states. But what it's done is, for the duplication of programs, as you know, you can, on your handheld right now, search for actuarial degrees online. And that's not going to prevent or stop a student in Maryland who lives in Maryland to access the actuarial degree or any other degree that is limited in Maryland to 2 institutions because of the HBCU issue. So in a way, it's opened up greater competition, greater access for the students, but greater competition for Maryland higher education to be able to attract and hold students. Does that help?
Very much so. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I have a question regarding withdrawal proposal. Why would a school withdraw a proposal for a program?
There are quite a few reasons, but primarily, typically they'll review their programs from time to time to determine if it is viable for them to continue the program. Generally, a major trigger would be enrollment. So if there are low enrollment, and then of course, if the program is no longer deemed viable, they may phase it out and transition into another program.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Okay. If there aren't any additional questions for the collegiate quarterly report, I'm going to move over to the private career school report, which starts on page 26 of your packet. The private career school report covers 460 program actions for quarter one. Again, quarter one is January 1st of 21 to March 31st of 21. Within this packet, you will see, I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong numbers. There are 40 non-degree academic program proposals for quarter one for the private career school quarterly report. Within this quarterly report, the actions are covering programs which are non-degree programs in the state. This is your vocational training, and it also covers additional actions by that unit. In summary, for the private career school unit, there was one school approval that was withdrawn. There was one program proposal that was withdrawn, and there were 8 total workforce development sequence scholarship approvals. And I'll go over the different sections there because that may be of interest. And 23 training provider questionnaire actions taken for this quarter. To begin with the school approval that was withdrawn, that was an institution that was offering certified nursing assistant and geriatric nursing assistant training. That institution approval was withdrawn because they did not receive the appropriate curriculum approval from the Board of Nursing. MHEC had been working with that institution for quite some time prior to the withdrawal. There was one program approval that was withdrawn, that was from Hair Academy Incorporated, and that program was withdrawn due to a lack of students enrolled in the massage therapy program. The workforce development sequence scholarship, this section deals with a series of programs that are approved for financial assistance for students that are enrolled in non-credit certificate programs that lead to apprenticeship, employment, licensure, and/or job skills enhancement. And these sequences are approved for Maryland community colleges only. There were a total of 15 actions taken over this quarter. And the final section for the training provider questionnaires, this action is a result of applicants that are proposing training in the state of Maryland. Okay. This section, training provider questionnaire, these are applicants that are proposing training in the state of Maryland. They submit the training questionnaire and staff will evaluate it to see if that training is to be regulated by the Maryland Higher Education Commission, if it's exempt or if it's not exempt. If it's not exempt from our regulations, they will have to follow through with their intent to continue to operate, and they would need to seek approval from the Secretary of Higher Education. If the training is exempt from our regulations, most likely that's a result of maybe they're providing training to their own employees. And if it's unregulated, this could be training that does not fall within the Code of Maryland regulations that's requiring approval from the commission. And that could be continuing education programs and again, programs that may be targeted towards a certain population. There were a total of 23 training provider questionnaire actions taken. So I'll stop right there and see if you have any questions regarding the private career school quarterly report. Okay. I will leave time at the end in case you have additional questions. For the third report, this is a new report that most of you have probably not seen. There are 3 units within academic affairs. The third unit that we're going to go over, the quarterly report, is our Veterans Affairs Unit. It's also known as the Maryland State Approving Agency for Veterans Education and Training Benefits. That unit is headed up by Mr. Everett Jackson. He's the Associate Director. This report will cover actions taken for institutions and training establishments that accept GI Bill benefit payments. And this will cover all of our institutions, as well as some of our public safety and other training facilities, such as flight and institutions offering licensing and certification exams. And I'll explain that in a minute. For the final report for Veterans Affairs, there were a total of 460 program actions taken for this quarter. And it's important to note that the quarterly report for Veterans Affairs is based on the federal fiscal year. So this quarter, even though it appears under the Q1 report, January 1st through March 31st of 21 would be the second quarter for the fiscal year. The actions taken under this report involve program approval actions for the Veterans Affairs Unit. These are any actions, initial and renewal actions taken to programs that are proposed for the use of this benefit program. The actions taken in this for this approval are based on the federal, the Code of Federal Regulations, and that I'll stop at the end and explain that a little bit further if you need. Section 2 refers to the visits that were conducted by the Veterans Affairs Unit. There were 2 visits actually conducted for compliance within this quarter. For the federal fiscal year, this year, the Veterans Affairs Unit is responsible for 27 total visits to institutions. Additional visits would be inspection visits, as well as any visits that are deemed necessary at the request of the VA. At this time, we have slightly altered the way we do visits under the current pandemic, so most of the visits are recurring virtually. The 4th section is technical assistance. This will be any questions, emails, phone calls related to the use of veterans education benefits and training. And it's also from institutions that are providing or certifying students to use their benefits at their institution. There was a series of outreach activities and liaison visits during the quarter. This is part of the requirements for this Veterans Affairs Unit. Some of the visits included a interagency meeting with various agencies that have specialists that help veterans. So all the agencies within the state of Maryland are represented at this meeting. This is a Veteran Service Specialist quarterly meeting. The unit also meets with institutions regarding shared interest related to anything from requirements for the approval process to any changes in federal regulations regarding the use of veterans benefits or veterans activities on campus. The unit is also engaged with the Maryland Apprenticeship Council as well, because a large portion of their actions involves apprenticeship. So I'm going to stop right there and just go over and point out to you on the final page of the report that there is a list, because I know there are a lot of acronyms and abbreviations here. The Veterans Affairs Unit does operate under a cooperative agreement, which is a federal contract to provide these services for the state of Maryland. So their approval actions, their compliance, the outreach activities are all part of this comprehensive cooperative agreement that they're granted an annual allocation to provide the service for the federal government. The major components of the contract includes approval actions for institutions of higher education, private career schools, apprenticeship, on-the-job training, flight programs. They also indicate correspondence, but we really don't have any correspondence programs. That's really an outdated term, as well as licensing and certification exams. That would be institutions that provide either a national or state exam for licensure. So this is a very comprehensive unit. It crosses over of the other two areas of academic affairs, and this is a secondary approval for those students wishing to use the Veteran Education and Benefits offered by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Okay. I know that was a lot of information, so I'll stop right there and take any questions or comments regarding the Veterans Affairs Quarterly Report.
Trish, I can't see, so you can let me know whether you see anybody wanting to ask a question or not.
Madam Chair, I do not see any questions, but I will offer for the good of the group that hopefully we'll have more time in education policy to review any additional questions regarding the quarterly reports. And I'll try to give a brief explanation again for the next quarterly reports that may be presented in September.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Dr. Dow, do you want to introduce the next item?
Absolutely. I just want to share my appreciation to Trish and her staff for all the work that happens. As you can see from the quarterly reports, a lot goes through Trish's department, and just really want to recognize her leadership and shepherding a lot of these projects. So thank you. Our next item on the agenda is a final adoption of regulations. I'd like to turn the time over to Alexia Van Orden. She is our analyst that coordinates a lot of efforts with the Fire Commission. And so, Alexia, I'll turn the time over to you.
Sorry.
Alexia, I would ask that you provide a little bit of background for the commissioners in terms of what it involves, you know, and what group of career professionals this involves also.
I seem to be having a problem.
Alexia, I think you might be on a delay. I think is what may be happening. If you can hear me, you may want to pop out and pop back in. Okay.
And also, it's on your screen, it's showing that you're still on mute.
There you go. Just give her a minute. Let's see if she pops back in. If she doesn't, we can either go to the next agenda item and wait for her to come back in, or I'm happy to present as well.
Dr. Dow, why don't you present the last item, and then if Alexia doesn't come back in, you can go back and do that one too.
Okay, perfect. So we'll move on to the next regulatory item. This is on page 37 of the commission book. Bear with me. I feel like we put a lot of time and energy into our memo, so I'm going to read mostly from the memo because I think it provides the best explanation as opposed to me kind of stumbling through an explanation. So under Maryland law, private career schools are required to maintain a financial guarantee to ensure that tuition refunds can be made to students in an event of a school closure. The statute requires that the guarantee be at least 100% of non-Title IV tuition liability and gives MHEC the discretion to increase that amount. By regulation, MHEC requires an increased financial guarantee depending on the type of institution, how long the institution has been operating, if the institution is financially viable, and the modality of the program being offered. And you'll see in the memo that there's a summative chart that breaks down our current set of regulations. So again, currently, if a private career school seeks to offer a hybrid or fully online program, the school is expected to hold a financial guarantee equal to 100% of total tuition liability, regardless of the financial viability of the institution or how long the institution has been operating. This requirement has not changed since it was instituted in 2004. With many of our private career schools now operating in either a hybrid or fully online modality due to the pandemic, this requirement poses a significant financial burden to the schools. In some instances, the financial guarantee for an online or hybrid program might be as much as 10 times higher than the same program offered in a traditional format, making it essentially prohibitive for a private career school to offer online education. In turn, this can make it difficult for many students who have been traditionally underserved to pursue post-secondary education. Additionally, this added financial requirement replicates efforts at the federal level to provide student protection should a school close. So the proposed regulatory amendments eliminate the distinction between modalities as a factor in calculating a financial guarantee. With this change, the financial guarantee calculations for hybrid and fully online programs would be exactly the same as programs in a traditional format, with a minimum guarantee of 100% of non-Title IV tuition liability and an increased guarantee based on how long the institution has been operating and if the institution is financially viable. The proposed regulatory change was discussed at the MHEC Private Career School Advisory Council in July, and the council provided general support in moving forward with the proposed changes. So these proposed regulatory amendments are enclosed for your review and for publication in the Maryland Registrar. They've been approved for legality by our Assistant Attorney General. Upon approval, the proposed regulations and regulatory amendments will be submitted to AELR, after which they are submitted to the Division of State Documents for publication in the Maryland Registrar. The last thing to note is, in addition to requesting approval for the customary regulatory changes and the regulatory process, emergency adoption is recommended to allow schools to continue to offer hybrid or online education without interruption. Emergency regulations will become effective soon after the approval by AELR and expire 6 months later. So we need to do a simultaneous submission for both the traditional regular process for regulatory changes as well as emergency regulation. So let me go ahead and read the recommendation verbatim. It is recommended that the Commission approves for publication in the Maryland Register the enclosed proposed regulatory amendments to the private career school regulations regarding financial guarantees for distance education. Pursuant to Section 10-111 of the State Government Article of the Annotated Code, declares that emergency adoption of the regulations is necessary and approves the enclosed amendments for emergency adoption. And 3, authorizes its Assistant Attorney General to make non-substantive edits to the proposed regulations to conform to the stylistic and formatting requirements of AELR and DSD. And I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer questions, but I think it has to go to a vote and then.
Right, so Dr. Dowd, let's get the motion on the floor and then we can open it for questions. So could I have a motion to, I thought I heard somebody, did I hear that?
Yes, you hear Commissioner Jackson. I move that we support the recommendations as proposed.
Right, and could I have a second, please?
I so move, Commissioner Boyd.
Great, thank you so much. All right, are there any questions about what is being proposed?
I would just add, this is Jim Fielder, I would just ask Emily if you take a minute and explain what AELR is, as well as the DSC, because you use that an acronym a couple times, that they're part of the review process, and then also explain what it means to have the financial guarantee for those institutions that close, which we've had to deal with in the last 5 years.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you, Secretary Fielder. So AELR, it stands for the Administrative, Executive, and Legislative Review, and DSD stands for Division of State Documents. I could take a shot at trying to explain those things, but I think Soma's probably the better person to walk through it. Soma, I don't know if you're able to explain their role and responsibilities.
Sure. So AELR is a joint committee of the legislature. I'm going to go forward and then sort of back up to AELR's part. So regulations have to be published in the Maryland Register, basically giving notice to Maryland residents before they can be, there can be any final adoption. So DSD, Division of State Documents, is the state's entity that publishes the Maryland Register. AELR reviews all regulations before they get published to make sure essentially that it's within the scope of the law that was passed. So whatever the authority for the regulation is, the AELR committee wants to make sure that basically the MHEC is doing what the legislature wanted, fulfilling the legislative intent and not going beyond that scope. And so they have a 15-day period to look at it before it can be published. On very, very rare occasions, they will actually object to the regulations, in which case there's a whole process where it goes to the governor in terms of whether, you know, it goes through. But typically, they may have a few comments that they bring back to the commission, but for the most part, they approve them as they're written. I would say like 99% of the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And someone also explain the process that MHEC goes through, because this is only one step in it.
Do you mean the process after it's published in the Maryland Register?
Yes. Yes.
Sure. So once it's published in the Maryland Register, then there is a 30-day period in which members of the public can submit comments. And those usually go to whichever assistant secretary is sort of, you know, in charge of that division. MHEC generally does not get public comments we have, and when we do, so sorry, let me back up for a second. The regulations, when they're first published, are proposed. So that's basically public, let me tell you about these, you know, if you don't want them, let us know what's going to happen, you know, what you want to happen. After that, only after that, can the commission actually adopt them so that they become effective. So when there are public comments, when we bring these regulations back to you all to become effective, be approved for adoption, then we would bring the comments with you and, you know, give you any explanation of why we, you know, staff does not agree with the comments or does. But that's also very, very rare. And then once you guys approve the regulations for final adoption, then they are published in the Maryland Register, again, notice of final adoption. And 10 days after that, they become effective. So it is a very long process. It generally takes about 3 to 4 months, it's minimum 90 days usually. And then because, you know, of the commission's process with the approval at the commission meetings once a month, generally for the commission, it can go up to about 5 months.
Thank you very much again, Soma. Are there any other questions or requests for clarification?
Would you like me to just quickly answer the question about the financial guarantee and the purpose of it? Sure.
Please.
So we require our private career schools to hold a financial guarantee and the amounts that you see in that chart. The primary purpose of that financial guarantee is to provide refunds to students should they be enrolled at the time of a school closure. And so in the past several years, we've had a number of schools close. We then utilize that financial guarantee to do just that, provide student refunds. We'll also occasionally use the financial guarantee to digitize student records if a school has paper records, because we then, our agency becomes the repository for those student records. And then students come to us for closed school transcripts. So it's important that we have a bond. There's kind of a secondary purpose that our agency uses a bond for, and that's to ensure financial viability. If a school can't get a bond, that indicates to us that they don't necessarily have the resources or capacity to really do full functioning curricula and program offerings. But first and foremost, student refunds when a school closes.
I'm just going to hop in and explain one other thing people might have questions about. Title IV is federal financial aid. So that's, you know, the Stafford Loan Program, Perkins, all of those things. And the federal government has a rule that at least 10% of all tuition must be, for for-profit schools in the event, must be from basically not from Title IV. So in other words, you can generally sort of assume that non-Title IV tuition is about 10% of the total tuition liability. And Title IV tuition is actually basically guaranteed by the federal government. Students have options to discharge those loans through the federal government.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? So we have a motion on the floor. If I could ask for approval, all in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. For those of you who can see hands being raised.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, terrific. Thank you. The motion passes. So, Dr. Day, I don't know if Alexia is with us. Do you want to go back to the other item?
I am.
Yep, Alexia.
Oh, can you hear me this time? Okay.
Yep, you're good.
Yes. And I believe the secretary had asked for a brief introduction. I'm assuming I heard that Soma gave you the regulatory update of what I'll be presenting, which is on page 34 of your commission book. But as a very brief introduction, the Fire Rescue Education and Training Commission falls under the Higher Education Commission, and the Fire Rescue Education Training Commission is the agent or the body responsible for setting state level standards for coordination of fire and emergency services training and education. So as on page 34, on February 24th, the commission approved for publication in the Maryland Register proposed amendments to the regulations for certification standards and procedures for emergency services instructors, which are recommended by the Maryland Fire Rescue Education and Training Commission. The purpose of these amendments is to update the edition year of the appropriate instructor standards manual, change certain instructional methods, and make minor style and language changes. These proposed regulations were published in the Maryland Register on May 21st, 2021. Public comment period for those regulations ended on June 21st, 2021, and no public comments were received. These proposed amendments to the regulations are now ready for the Commission's final adoption. The amendments will become effective 10 days after notice of the final adoption is published in the Maryland Register. And the recommendation for these is that it is recommended that the Commission approves for final adoption the attached amendments to the regulations for certification standards and procedures for emergency services instructors.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to put the recommendation on the floor for approval?
This is Chuck McDaniels, and I move that we accept the recommended recommendations.
And a second, please.
I second the motion, Commissioner Boyd.
Thank you. And are there any questions? Any need for clarification?
I just have a quick question regarding when public comment is sought, how is it advertised? As in, once published to the Maryland Register, how do we let people know that, hey, we need public comment for anything in general?
The notice in the Maryland Register is actually the notice that public comment is available. I would say typically sort of advocacy organizations are watching the Maryland Register and they let people know that public comments are open.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then all in favor of approving the recommendation for the attached amendments to the regulations for the certification standards and procedures for emergency services instructors, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so it passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that is the last item on our agenda. I would simply open it up to see if there's any business that anybody else wants to introduce. Okay. Secretary Fielder, before I wrap things up and just remind people about meetings coming up, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, just to point out that that meeting is a special meeting to review requests from Stevenson University on the 13th of September. And the other thing is, it just struck me is that a lot of these Zoom and go to meetings feel a lot like the traditional seances they used to have when you would say, are you here? Are you here? Can I hear you? Can I see you? I think I see you, but I'm not sure. And I really do appreciate everybody hanging in there today because we had a few of those technical issues. Thank you.
I feel like there's a black cloud over my technology right now. Anyway, so good reminder about the September 13th meeting, the special review meeting. And then our regular meeting is on the 22nd, which is where we will hear the budget presentation. So that's a longer than normal meeting. So I hope everybody can make both of those. And if that's it, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Somebody say you want to adjourn so I can pull the thing over.
Yes, this is Commissioner Jackson. So moved. Thank you.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.